All right, so if you you can see it in your books on how to render. It's going to talk about kind of like the anatomy of the lighting of your lips. You'll see it's slightly, well, it has this kind of like the same thing that what you just saw, but the effect that you were achieving in foundation was slightly more reflective on one light. But you do see a core shadow. You just see a little bit of a highlight on that side and then the darkness on the other one. But you can see some terminology here about our passive highlights, our 1, 2, 3 surfaces, and we're gonna work with it. So this is the lighting system that you saw last time. Let me see if I can go closer to that. All right, so we have start a little bit dark, we go to a highlight, then we transfer into a core shadow, and then we go a little bit towards light again. Right, so basically using this, I want you guys to try and do some rendering for your markers, right? If you have any questions, you can obviously ask me, or you can browse the material on the books that you have. All right, so let's try and do some marker renderings for my cylinder. So I have a construction that has different cylinders that are on the ground. You guys can use the ones from the template that I created, and you'll see that I've used blue very thin to be able to apply my marker and not have a black line there by the time I want to add some highlight. Okay, so you can do that. You can try it directly on the pen, see how that feels, and change that. So let's start doing a white cylinder, a gray, black cylinder, and a mix. What you'll do with your templates is just like render white, gray, black, and some mix until you run out of cylinders to render. Okay, so let me just find number one. That's more ink. All right, so it's kind of like similar to what we've done, where it's still a 1, 2, 3 shading. So here, since I can see shadow there, I know that this face is going to be kind of like my 2 or 3 sides. So it's not going to be full white, right? There's going to be some darkness. So at this point, I'm going to try to go around that edge. And once that I protect the edge so I don't go over it, I can try and create that gradient a little bit, right? If I want to create more of a gradient, I can wait for it to dry out and then apply a little bit of marker of the same number because I don't want it to go too dark, and then go. Now the next darkest part is my my core shadow, right? So how do I know where to place my core shadow and where to place my highlight?
Shadows where the tangency of the light direction is right.
Yeah, makes sense, more or less, yeah. Do you have a different answer? Same thing? All right, so correct, we have that. So we know that's somewhere around there, and you'll notice how I'm working in the direction of my surface. I'm not going to do that, right? I'm going to do this, and I know that's going to be the darkest part. So from there, since I don't have a lighter marker than this, if I want to create a gradient, I can start by trying to leave some streaking and discover a little bit of white behind that. There is a marker that's called a blender, which is just the solvent, no ink. So you can sometimes get a little bit of a gradient from 1 to white if you wanted to do that. So from here up, you're also going to start kind of creating that gradient going towards your highlight, which is going to be the perpendicular to that light direction, right? So from here, I can kind of like take that, and then from there, I can add the light that is going on this direction. Now, if I wanted to use my blender, I'm going to apply blender first to my surface, and then I can apply my marker. Okay. Now I'm going to randomly choose a 5 for my shadow, and I can just render it flat, or I could go with the reasoning that wherever I put the shadow of my hand, notice there it's fuzzy and light, and as I go down it gets with more definition and it gets darker. So if that's the case, if that's what I want to do, I'm going to want to start switching from that number 5 to a lighter marker. Try to follow the direction of my shadow. Oops, a bit too far, but there is my cylinder that is of a very light color. Right, so now I'm going to do the same thing with darker cylinder. So if I use just gray number 1 here, I'm just going to transfer some of my other elements. If I get very little contrast, what I'm going to get is a very matte finish in my object. If I go, for example, from a very dark gray in my core shadow to pure white in my highlight, that's going to basically say almost like it's metal, right? We increase reflectivity with that. So I'm going to choose kind of like a midpoint. I'm going to choose a 5 for my core, right? So we have the tangent here. So I'm going to start by adding a little bit of that. I should probably start with my lighter marker. Just because I don't want to abuse the darker areas so that I can't correct later. But as long as you keep the dark tone kind of like a little bit limited, you're probably okay. Alright, so from there, then we can start going up. I'm going to add a little bit more of 5 so I can protect my edges. I can go up a little bit more. And let's do 2. Go to our highlight, and then from our highlight we start going there. So that is going to be almost like super reflective. So it depends on if I want my lightest point to be white or not. I may decide that my lightest point is going to be at 10% gray, and that's fine. Probably want a little bit of 3 there on that edge. Right, and I have kind of like the shape. Now I need to do this face. Since I don't know how dark I want to go, I'm going to start with one of the lighter markers that I used. Right? In this case, it looks like this is going to be number 3 because the distance of this shadow here is greater than that. But let's start being safe. So I'm going to try and protect my edge. I'm going to try to not go over my white line. So in this case, right, so I'll decide if that looks accurate or if I need to make it darker. I'm gonna let it dry for a little bit. Shadow, we mentioned number 5. We're going to 4. And so on. The more it gets far, the fussier it will be. I don't want it to look like there's steps, so I may need to go back and kind of like blend in a little bit. All right, so you get the idea. White, gray, black, the next one, and you do some of them that have those material cuts. You can play with your black lines and white lines for part lines from this to the other one. Darken this guy here. You'll notice at some point, many times when we apply marker to our work, it looks like it's like unfinished and it doesn't look as good as we think it should. But remember, you still need to kind of like finish it and add your line work. And once you add it, your eye is going to go, and even if this was like bled a lot and there's a lot going on, once I add my line, my brain will go specifically there and will ignore anything that I let go. Right, so. Yes.
Are we allowed to do some touch-ups with black and white color pencils?
Yes. Definitely. In rendering, it's everything is allowed. You give me an awesome result. The sketching part, the line work, is where I'm trying to push you guys to use the pen. But for these guys, yes, you could if you don't achieve the gradient that you want with your marker, you could definitely or probably add a little bit of the effect with your color pencil just to kind of like enhance the core or something, and also probably to kind of like touch up some of the lines that you may have lost here, create extra gradients, so on. So even your line work, if you wanted to add some sort of part line here, oops, I just lost my lead, but you can definitely use your color pencils. And then you'd have to add the white portion to that. And so on, right? So let's have fun. You can use the templates that you already created with pen and use an underlay for that. Yes.
When we're making our cylinders, if we make it like more contrasting and stuff, does that make it look shinier?
Yes. If you give me, I don't know, gray 9 here and white here, that's gonna make it look shinier.
Okay. And
right? It's not gonna make it look chrome. If you want chrome, you would actually have a cut, right? So right now you see how it's a gradient. Chrome will have bands almost, right? So the shinier it gets, the more contrast it will have, and the more reflective it gets, the sharper the changes are doing. So right now I have a very smooth transition between my highlight and my cast shadow. If it's super reflective, I may have a sharp line of white and then a sharp line of black with stuff going on. That's next semester, but feel free to try. As long as you give me the main 4, you can mess up with the other 2 because I think there are 6 cylinders in that template, right? So give me 4 of that and then mess up with that, see what happens. Cool. All right, let's take some time to do that. All right, so I don't know how visible that is to where you're standing, but we have a series of lamps or lanterns that have kind of like a different feel, right? They're made from those repeated cylinders, either with straight lines or not, and then with some like interesting part lines there. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna render one of these elements in white, one of them in black, or like just practice. It's a little bit more freedom thing here. So for example, how will we do the organic one? I'm gonna get my gray number 1 because that's gonna be my lightest one. And the difference here is that instead of going straight like we did in this ones, I'm gonna go along with the surface, right? So if I want my, this is my kind of like my light direction, if that's my tangent, then my cast shadow is going to start kind of like there, right? I'm going to protect that edge. I'm going to protect that edge. And then from there, I'm going to start kind of like going with my surface, right? Until I get to my highlight, which is going to be the perpendicular. And then from there, I'm going to start doing the other side, right? So if I want my object to be white, probably that may be enough to do that. But now, how do I do that side? And that's when you have to ask, well, where is my surface looking at? Is it looking towards the light source, or is it looking away from the light source? And you're going to get it probably, you're actually going to have an inverted version of events. So maybe this is going to be my cast shadow, and from there I'm going to start reverting towards my highlight that's going to be down here, right? And then in this side it's going to be something similar. I'm going to start with really dark. I'm going to start going towards the light source there. And then this is pretty straightforward that it's dark. So if I want to add a little bit of more contrast, it also helps if your markers aren't dying, but you could kind of like show that a little bit. So you're going to go along with the surface. If I have this, I may decide that my core shadow is going to be here at the edge of my other line, and from there I'm going to start bringing this down so that it goes into the lightness, and so on, right? And then we're going to add our shadow, that in this case, for the sake of speed, I'm just going to go and do it flat. Right, and then I can add my line work, kind of like explain where this is. So that is how you would do a an organic one. I still need to add line work everywhere else, but you know how to do that, right? So that's how you do kind of like an organic element. Now, what if it's made of flats? Then we're gonna do kind of like a similar thing. I'm gonna do this a little bit darker. I'm gonna start with number 2. And depending on where this is, this may be my my core shadow. I'm going on to my highlight, right? And then I'm gonna start doing the same with this little kind of like other surfaces. And one trick to make it look better is to not have my highlight kind of match the next highlight and so on. So for example, here I'm gonna change, probably extend my cast shadow a little bit so that there is a slight difference with my gradient. Right? And then I can go here towards this end, and I can do that. Can go here at the back, and maybe I do one that's slightly offset. And then I go to the one at the back. It's gonna be slightly offset as well. Gonna do the same thing that I did for the other one here. Oh, well, first I need to have a little bit of a cast shadow there. Probably bring it up. Going around. And then whatever is going in, I know that if my highlight is on this edge with this one, it's going to be somewhere there. So that means that my core shadow is probably going to be on this area. And it's slowly going to transition into my highlight. And let's give this a darker core in here, like a different material, so that when I add my line work here, and I'm doing this as a pretty fast sketch. If you want like a final rendering, you probably would have to be like more gentle. I'm using my raised like a compass here to kind of get a little bit better line work. You see what I mean, right? So you can get that rendering and then adding your cast shadow. If I'm doing a quick sketch, a type A sketch, I may just do like a flat shadow. If you're doing a final, then again, should be a little bit faster. And then I could add more contrast. This is a little bit too light, but there you go. So that's how you would render organic versus made of planes. Obviously, if this was a gray, then our lightest area or our darkest area, like everything would move down. And then these lines that we're using right now with a black pen would need to be recreated with a white pen for that highlight. Cool? Yes?
So things that are at angles, the cool shadow like jumps up a little bit.
Yes, offset them a little bit so it doesn't look like a band of things. Yes.
Do you also project our shadows or just kind of like guess them on these brackets?
If you guess them, they need to look correct, right? As long as you make it look like they make sense, that's fine. You can project them. Even you can project these ones here. At least you can know that my light direction, actually this one would not be that correct because my light direction is this. So actually this one would probably need to end in there a little bit. So just be careful. Make them look like they make sense, and that's all. If the simpler the shape, the more important it is to get them tight, because you're going to be able to tell spot on that something's wrong. If the shape starts becoming a little bit more complex, project its basic shape, and then you can kind of like guess what's going on in between. But it has to be somewhat of a strong, like an informed guessing, and not just blind guessing. Correct? All right, so let's try this, guys. After that, you had, again, 5 different objects, or 6. So let's try and render one so that it looks white, one that it looks gray, one that it looks black, mixed materials, and so on. All right?
For the organic?
Sorry?
For the organic ones?
Again, sorry.
For the organic ones or for just cylinders?
If you only did this kind of object, that's fine. I would like you to eventually try that, especially because in your final you're going to do an organic. So if you don't have it, build one quick one and then try it. Cool. An ellipse. So if you take your how to draw book, the information that I'm going to show, it's pages 75 to 79. I'm just going to show you how that looks. '75 to '79. Basically around all this subsetting ellipses. Here we go. So this is actually, if I start that. Okay, so these pages are basically going to show what I have. We're going to learn how to project and subdivide an ellipse in as many sections that we want. And then we're going to take a few shortcuts to do it. So 5 spoke, 8 spoke, 3 spokes, or 6 are doable with shortcuts. The other one, if you want to get it right, you probably need something like this. So let's see what all this means. So can I borrow a blank piece of 11 by 17 from somebody? Yes, right there. Just one. All right, thank you. So when we're designing, it doesn't have to be only for car wheels, but for example, if your flashlights, if you want them to have something like, I don't know, if you want them to have like some like little divots there, and you want them to look like they make sense, right? To look accurate. So the first thing is you're gonna design a lot of things from circles. So again, like working in getting those circles right is going to be crucial for you. Now, let's say that I'm going to divide this circle because I want to have a cylinder that has 8 subdivisions, right? 8 is one of the easy ones, right? If I pretty much imagine that this is in a box, I can do kind of like an asterisk. Right? I'm going to get areas where this is going to touch it. Right? So if I extend these lines, I can make it the edge of my plane in perspective. Let's say that that's my plane in perspective, and it's going to become a cylinder going that way, right? Which means that I can find its center and send it to my vanishing point, so that then I can find my ellipse in there. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to project those things at the end so that I know where I'm going to touch. So for example, this one. Right now I could say that I already have them, but notice how I project this and I can find where those are. Right now one of these lines is a little bit off, so just be careful. So I'll project that, and I can project that into perspective, and I will find that this circle here matches with that circle there, right? Now what happens if this point, I take it and I push it backwards, right? If it's there, then I'm going to have that my subdivisions are going to now go to that point backwards, right? So if I want to do, let's try it again. Let's say that I have this plane in perspective. That's going to be going there. It's a little bit fat, so that my ellipse kind of lives there, and I can project this to make a circle. And then let's say that I want to divide it into 3, but I don't want it to be like 1, 2, 3, which is going to be like a triangle here. Let's say that I want the triangle to be a little bit tilted. I want my 3 sides to be equal, right? So what I could do here is that I can project that point over there and then send it to perspective, which is going to be kind of like over there. Project this, send it, that's going to be over here, and project that and send that, and that's going to be over there, right? So now I have 3 points that I can manipulate. What happens if I then have a smaller ellipse here, right? I can find the same points and then project, right? So now I can take this to that point, I can take that to that point, and I can take that to that point. And I could then start kind of like designing whatever element I want there. So that's kind of like a 3-spoke element. So we can do the same with any number of subdivisions that we want. Now there are some shapes that we can take shortcuts from, like the 8, that's pretty easy because the representation is exactly here. If I want to do a subdivision of 6, I can do a circle. And if I break this circle in half in this way, in half in this way, half and half, I then have an interior hexagon, right? Which means that if I have another circle and I break it in two, I'm gonna have another hexagon there. So that I can then know that this is going to be going towards the edges, right? So the hexagon, you do it like that. So if you want to do one that is like this, and you know more or less where your kind of like plane is in perspective, you can break that in half, and then you will have the edges of what you're going to do. If we have that other cylinder, let's now do it out here, and I can do that little plane there. I can also find those halves and do it there, right? So that now I can connect that here, that there, that there, 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 and there. And I could come up with my design. Right? Now if I want to give thickness to these guys, I can do that. And I can understand how they're built. And I can add line weight, the ones I'm not seeing, right? Now if I want to go really crazy, and here you go, let's do a 5-spoke. So we have the half of it. I'm going to divide this top one into thirds. So 1, 2, 3. I'm going to project that. Right? I'm going to project this one into fourths. So there and there. And I can do the same with the circle. Right? So I can then know that this is going to hit that, 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 and that. If I want to go crazy, then I could make this one point there. I can make this one point here. I can make this one point there. I can make that one point there. And I can make that one point there. And then design my car tire to look like it's kind of like fanning out. Right? So if I want to transfer this, one method would be by doing this and projecting, and the other method could be, if I understand where my plane is, dividing this in thirds, going to my perspective, dividing this in fourths, going to my perspective, so I have the edges, right? Then if I have like a depression in here, I could do the same thing, divide in 3, divide in 4, so then I can connect from there to there, from there to there, from there to there, there, and there. Right? And then I can make up my my design of whatever I'm doing. This could still be a flashlight, not a car tire, but maybe I decide that I want kind of like this cool depressions here. Right? So it's going to give me all kinds of like fun stuff to do. Your homework is a car tire, and it's tricky because there's a lot of elements there. Like for example, let's say that I'm drawing this guy here. You can see it on the example of the PDF that is uploaded, and you'll see that I'm considering kind of like the wall inside the rim and then the background. This can have different designs, can have like different things. I like to be physically impossible and just show like a hole to nothing, but that's up to you. But this is more or less how it could look at the end. So thinking about that wall, that's up to you how far you push it. You could paint this with your marker just black or just to separate it from the rest. I'm just gonna demand line drawing, but once you get that line drawing, scan it and then mess up with it with marker. Let's see where you go. You already did it. Yes, Jaren.
Are we staying with the tread for the moment, or just doing just the?
I want the emphasis on the division of the ellipse. So the answer is you can do that, but that's an extra effort. I've prepared these templates for you guys to practice here in class, just to give you an example of what that could look like. We're not gonna marker render this. If you do that, that's extra credit for you, but we don't have to. It's basically line work or to this level tops. Now I don't want you to add your divisions here. I want you to use this as an underlay so that you can practice your line work and start dividing that and getting that work done, right? So, any questions about this?